Okay, hello and welcome everyone. So in this video, I'm going to do two exercises pertaining to asymmetric information. First, I'm going to think about an exercise pertaining to adverse selection and then moral hazard. And what I'll do is I'll go over the exercises first, then I'll go over the solution. So in the first case, the adverse selection exercise, consider a market where there's good cars and bad cars. Buyers cannot tell whether any car is bad quality before making the purchase. Buyers are willing to pay $2,000 for a good quality car, $1,000 for a bad quality car. Sellers are willing to accept $1,800 for a good quality car, $800 for a bad quality car. The percent of all cars that are bad quality is theta. What's the value of theta such that all cars trade? Now, suppose 10% of cars are lemons. Mechanic is offering to inspect the car for sale, certify that it's not bad quality, not a lemon. If car sellers are risk neutral, what's the highest price that the car seller would accept for such a service? Who would buy the service? Then suppose all cars are offered for sale are going to be sold. The percent of all cars that are bad quality is theta. What happens to theta if the car buyers incur a $100 transaction cost when buying a car? All right, and then let's look at the moral hazard question. Suppose you run a shop that produces t-shirts. Suppose you're considering two compensation schemes. You could pay your worker a weekly wage of W, or you may pay a weekly wage of W plus a piece rate per shirt Q. Suppose the worker has a psychic effort cost function, this nice quadratic, effort squared minus twice the effort plus 2. The worker's utility function is just going to be the wage minus their psychic effort cost. They have an outside option of $5. Total t-shirt production is given by, well, just quantity is equal to their effort, just 1 to 1. Suppose you can sell each t-shirt for $4 and your only cost is labor. Suppose you decide to pay a weekly wage of $5. How much effort would the employee put in under the system? What are going to be your profits? Consider the alternative of paying the worker a wage of 0 and a piece rate of $4 per shirt. Again, how much effort and what are the profits? Suppose you continue paying the 0 wage and then $4 piece rate, but require the worker to pay you a weekly fee for opportunity to work, maybe specialized equipment that they're borrowing or whatever. What size fee such that both parties will accept the contract? All right, so now I'll go over each of these carefully. You'll see my solution there. The first case, we want to know what value of theta, what fraction of bad quality cars still allows all cars to be sold. So remember, if the consumers are unable to distinguish quality of cars prior to purchase, what they're going to do is they're going to assume the value of the car that they're about to buy is just equal to that of a randomly selected car. So they're going to find their expected value, and that's going to be the most that they'll pay. So what we want is for the expected value for a randomly selected car to be higher than the amount that sellers of good cars would be willing to accept. If it were lower, that's when we get the market failure problem with adverse selection in the lemons market, where the sellers of good cars wouldn't participate. If the willingness to pay, if the expected value for buyers was below 1,800, you just wouldn't have any good cars for sale. They'd all be bad cars. But we stipulated we want all cars to be sold. All cars to be sold. All right, so it's going to be 1,000 is my willingness to pay as a buyer for the quality for a bad car, where theta is the fraction of bad cars. 2,000 times the fraction of good cars, 1 minus theta, right? If theta are bad, then 1 minus theta are the good cars. And I need this to be bigger or equal to 1,800. And then from there, it's just distributing the 2,000 and then solving algebraically. Notice we've got a negative and a negative. When I multiply through or divide through, however you want to phrase it, because of the negative sign switching across this inequality, we flip the sign, and now we've got 200 over 1,000, or we need theta, the fraction of bad cars, to be less than or equal to 20%. If it's exactly 20%, the willingness to pay for randomly selected cars at least is exactly 1,800. If it's smaller than 20%, then we'd be willing to pay something strictly higher than 1,800. All right, suppose 10% of the cars are lemons. The mechanic is offering to inspect the car for sale, certify it's not bad quality. If the car sellers are risk neutral, what's the highest price that the car seller would pay? Who would buy this? Okay, so with 10%, with theta being equal to 10, what's the valuation of a randomly selected car? So my expected value of a randomly selected car, if 10% are bad, is going to be 1,000 times 10%, which is 100, plus 2,000 times 90%, which is 1,800, for an expected value of 1,800. So if the expected value of a randomly selected car is 1,800, but if my willingness to pay for a good car was 2,000, the sellers of good cars would be able to potentially, depending on their bargaining power, be able to gain that extra $100. So it's worth $100 to sellers of good cars to pay for the service, because right now they're only going to be able to get consumers to pay $1,900 for a randomly selected car. But if they know for sure the car is good, they'll pay up to $2,000. This is obviously worthless to sellers of bad cars, because if we certify your car's bad, it's not going to help you. Here's the puppy study break. So here's the puppy. All right, now suppose for all cars to be sold, the percent of all cars that are bad quality is theta. What happens to theta if car buyers incur a $100 transaction cost when buying a used car? Well, without the transaction cost, the expected value is just as we had before. It's just got to be bigger than $1,800 for all cars to sell. With the transaction cost of $100, now, well, the expected value has to be $100 higher to build in the transaction costs that we're going to be incurring, such that we have to believe now that in order for all cars to sell, my expected valuation has to be strictly higher than it would have been previously. Now that I'm losing this additional $100 in transaction costs, that's going to be made up for in terms of like the valuation of the car. For the fraction of cars to sell, though, so think about like what makes the value of the car rise. Well, the preponderance of good cars, and so we need fewer bad cars. And so if we solve this out, what I did is I've got the expected value minus the $100 for the transaction cost, move this to the other side, solve algebraically, and this is telling us theta's got to be smaller than 10%, right? The additional $100 additional cost must be reflected in the expected value of the car. And so what this is saying is, well, if we're going to pay a $100 transaction cost to buy a used car, this is going to mean that consumers are going to demand better cars in order such that that $100 transaction cost on average is worthwhile. All right. So suppose you run a shop. This is the moral hazard question. Suppose you run a shop that produces shirts. You're considering two compensation schemes. You pay your worker weekly wage of W, or you pay a wage of W plus the piece rate per shirt Q. Suppose the worker has an effort cost function here. The worker's utility function is given by this thing. The worker has an outside option of $5 per week. Total shirt production is just 1-to-1 effort for quantity. You can sell each shirt for $4. Your labor cost is it only costs is labor cost. Suppose you decide to pay a weekly wage of $5. How much effort will the employee put in? Oh, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the utility. Utility is going to be wage minus my psychic effort cost. So this is going to be $5 as my wage minus my effort cost. And what I want to do is find the optimal effort. Well, how do you find the optimal choice? You take the derivative. So du de gives me the optimal effort cost. 5 goes away. This is going to be minus 2e plus 2. And then solving, the optimal level of effort is going to be 1. What's going to be our associated profits? Well, if they put in effort of 1, they're going to make one shirt, which we're going to sell for $4, but we're going to pay them $5, so our profits are -1. That's not good. What's their utility? Well, it's going to be the $5 minus, well, the psychic effort cost was 1, plus 1 is 2, minus 2 is 0, so they're going to get $5, which is fine because that was exactly their outside option. Right, so they're actually indifferent between working for us and this scheme in part A. All right, consider the alternative of paying the worker a wage of 0 and a piece rate of 4 per shirt. How much effort will the employee put in? Well, this 4 per shirt, this is exactly the returns to their effort for our profits, right? This is our $4 here, right? So relative to my lecture on the full incentive contract, this $4 would be the B. This is B, right? The wages equal to a fixed component A plus a B times S. So this would be like, or B times Q. So this would be, the fixed component is 0, and then the B, the variable component, is going to be 4. Anyway, so A is 4. That's why I have over here A is 0, B is 4. So my wage is going to be 0 plus 4E. So my utility for the worker is going to be 4E, right? I'm going to get $4 for every unit of effort I put in, which is going to increase the quantity by 1, minus my psychic cost of effort. And then again, we're going to take a derivative. So I actually kind of skipped annotating this, but what I've done here is I've added this 4e to this 2e and got a 6e minus e squared plus, minus e. Yeah, this is going to be a minus e. And then I'm going to take a derivative here. So I'm going to take du de, and it turns out the optimal Effort level is 3. What's going to be our associated profits? Well, 0, because whatever is our revenue is 12, is also our cost, our labor costs of 12, so our profits are 0. What's their utility? Well, they're going to get the 12. We're paying them $4 for each of 3 shirts that they make, and then their psychic effort cost is going to be 9 minus 6 plus 1. Well, that comes out to be overall utility of 8. All right, good. So their utility is 8. Our profits are 0. Previously, our profits were -1, and their utility is 5. They're doing better. We're doing better. Now my question is, though, suppose you continue with this structure, but now you require the worker to pay you a weekly fee for the opportunity to work. Maybe they're renting equipment, specialized equipment, branding, whatever it is. What size of fee that they're paying us will allow everybody to accept the contract? Well, the worker is going to pay no more than 3, because if the worker pays more than 3, they have 8. If they pay more than 3, they're worse off than their outside option of 5 we had up here, right? And the firm's actually going to accept anything positive. So it turns out the valid fee, such that both will agree to the contract, is going to be any positive transfer from the worker renting this equipment up to, but not exceeding, 3. So let's see. Oh, I forgot the puppy study break. Shoot. Here's the puppy study break. So here's the puppy. All right. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.